Never trust your family when they say it's just a small wedding, especially when they're still inviting 200 other people. I learned this the hard way when my own mother used those exact words to exclude me from what turned out to be the social event of the year. My name is Madison, and I'm the second of 4 children in what everyone considers a perfect American family. At 28, I've spent most of my life being the quiet, understanding daughter, the one who never makes waves, never demands attention, and somehow always ends up watching everyone else's important moments from the sidelines. Growing up, I was the child who learned early that my voice didn't carry the same weight as my siblings. While my older sister, Sarah, commanded attention with her dramatic flair, and my younger brothers got away with everything because they were just boys, I became invisible by comparison. Not intentionally invisible, just forgettable. The pattern started when I was 16. My birthday fell on the same weekend as my father's company retreat, and instead of celebrating with me, my parents packed their bags and left me with a grocery store cake and a note that said, "We'll make it up to you next week, sweetheart." Next week came and went. So did the week after that. I spent my sweet 16 alone in our house, watching Netflix and wondering if this was what growing up felt like, a series of disappointments wrapped in empty promises. College graduation should have been different. 4 years of hard work, summa cum laude, the whole family promising they'd be there to watch me walk across that stage. But the morning of the ceremony, my mother called to tell me they couldn't make it. "The Petersons' daughter is getting married today, and we've known them for 20 years, she explained, as if that somehow made more sense than watching their own daughter graduate. I sat in that auditorium, surrounded by families cheering and taking pictures, and realized I was scanning the crowd for faces that were never going to appear. The worst was 3 years ago when I had that car accident on the interstate. Nothing life-threatening, but scary enough that I spent 6 hours in the emergency room getting stitches and x-rays. I called my parents first, voicemail. I called Sarah, she was in the middle of something important. I called my brothers, both sent me to voicemail. The only person who showed up was Emma, my college roommate who drove 2 hours just to sit with me while they checked for a concussion. Emma held my hand while they stitched up my forehead, and I remember thinking, this was what family was supposed to feel like. My relationship with Sarah has always been complicated. She's 3 years older and has this magnetic personality that draws people in like moths to a flame. Teachers loved her, friends flocked to her, and my parents, well, they've never made any secret about who their favourite child is. Sarah got the lead in every school play, the cheerleading captain position, the full scholarship to her dream college. I learned early that my role in this family dynamic was to be supportive, to cheer from the audience, to celebrate Sarah's wins as if they were my own. And honestly, I didn't mind. Sarah has this way of lighting up a room that I genuinely admire. When she announced her engagement to David 18 months ago, I was the first person she called. I screamed with joy, helped her plan the proposal announcement for social media, and spent countless hours listening to her wedding dreams. This was going to be Sarah's moment, and I was genuinely happy for her. Which is why what happened next felt like such a betrayal. It started with a phone call on a random Tuesday evening in March. I was making dinner in my tiny apartment when my mother's name appeared on my phone screen. "Madison, sweetheart, I have some news about Sarah's wedding," Mum said, her voice carrying that particular tone she uses when she's about to deliver disappointing news while pretending it's actually good news. Oh, good. I've been wondering when we'd get more details. When do you need me for the bridesmaid dress fitting? There was a pause, a long pause. Well, that's the thing, honey. Sarah and David have decided to keep things really small, just immediate family and a few close friends. You understand. I set down my spatula, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Small how? Like how many people? Oh, just intimate. Maybe 30 people total. Very low key. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right, but I pushed down my instincts. This was Sarah's day. If she wanted small, I could respect that. Okay, so when is it? I'll need to request time off work. Another pause. We're still finalising details. Sarah will call you when everything is set. Mum, where is it going to be? At least give me the general area so I can start looking at flights. Oh, we're not sure yet. Somewhere local, probably. Don't worry about flights. The conversation ended with me feeling confused and slightly hurt, but I tried to rationalise it. Maybe Sarah really did want something tiny. Maybe they were on a strict budget. Maybe I was reading too much into Mum's evasiveness. But over the next few weeks, little things started adding out. I'd see my cousins posting on social media about can't wait for Sarah's big day and shopping for the perfect wedding guest dress. Cousins I barely talk to, who live in different states. If this was supposed to be just 30 people, why were relatives from California and Texas already making plans? Then I accidentally discovered the truth, and it hit me like a physical blow. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner, one of those obligatory family gatherings where I smile and nod while everyone talks about their exciting lives. My phone was charging in the kitchen when Sarah's text came through to the family group chat. The family group chat that I suddenly realised I wasn't part of. Sarah had left her phone on the counter, screen up, when the notification appeared. OMG, the venue coordinator said we can accommodate 200 people instead of 150. This is going to be amazing. 200 people. Not 30, not intimate. 200. My hands started shaking as I stared at that screen. I felt like I was going to throw up. All those weeks of wondering about details, being told it was too small, too intimate, too last minute. It was all lies. They weren't planning a small wedding. They were planning a huge celebration. They just weren't planning to include me. I quickly scrolled up through the messages I could see, and each one was like a knife twist. Discussions about the menu for 200 guests, photos of centerpiece options, arguments about the guest list getting too long because we forgot about Dad's golf buddies. Talk of hiring a professional photography team and a live band. And then I saw it, the message that broke something inside me. It was from my mother, sent just 2 days ago. Let's not give Madison all the details yet. You know how she gets when she's not the centre of attention. She'll understand when the time comes. How I get when I'm not the centre of attention? I had never, not once in my entire life, tried to be the centre of attention at anyone else's event. I was the sister who helped plan surprise parties for other people. I was the daughter who worked double shifts so I could afford nice gifts for everyone else's birthdays. I was the family member who showed up for every single celebration, graduation, and milestone, even when no one showed up for mine. I screenshot that conversation, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Then I quietly put Sarah's phone back where I found it, excused myself from dinner, claiming a headache, and drove home in complete silence. That night, I sat on my couch staring at that screenshot for hours. The family group chat had dozens of members, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. Everyone was included except me. They were discussing flower arrangements and cake flavours and seating charts, and I wasn't even considered important enough to have an opinion. At 2 a.m, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not the quiet, controlled tears I usually allowed myself when family disappointed me, but the ugly, body-shaking sobs of someone who had finally accepted a truth I'd been denying for years. I wasn't actually part of this family. I was just someone who happened to share their DNA. But somewhere between the tears and the anger, something else started growing. A tiny spark of defiance that I'd never felt before. I was tired of being the understanding one, tired of making excuses for people who didn't even think enough of me to include me in a group chat. Tired of waiting for scraps of affection from people who saw me as an afterthought. For the first time in my life, I started wondering, what would happen if I stopped showing up? What would happen if I chose myself for once? The answer to that question would come sooner than I expected, and it would take me to the most beautiful place on earth. While my family's perfect wedding day fell apart 3,000 miles away. But first, I had to find the courage to disappoint them the same way they'd been disappointing me for 28 years. And surprisingly, once I made that decision, the courage came easier than I ever imagined it would. The next morning, I opened my laptop and started researching flights to Iceland. If my family could plan a celebration without me, I could plan an adventure without them. After all, some of the most beautiful moments in life happen when you're brave enough to walk away from people who can't see your worth. I just didn't know yet how dramatically my decision would expose the cracks in their perfect facade. The morning of Sarah's wedding, I woke up in a cosy guest house in Reykjavik at 5 a.m. Iceland time, which meant the ceremony back home was starting in just a few hours. Instead of feeling the familiar knot of anxiety that usually accompanied family events, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. I had planned this moment perfectly, while my family was probably rushing around doing last-minute preparations, arguing about flowers and seating arrangements. I was about to witness one of the most breathtaking sunrises on the planet at the Blue Lagoon geothermal spa. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had excluded me from their intimate 200-person celebration. And I had responded by treating myself to the most intimate celebration of all. Just me, the Icelandic wilderness, and the freedom to finally put myself first. I slipped into the milky blue waters just as the sun began painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that no wedding decorator could ever replicate. The mineral-rich water was perfectly warm against the crisp morning air, and for the first time in months, my shoulders actually relaxed. I hadn't realised how much tension I'd been carrying until it started melting away in that magical water. I took out my phone, waterproof case because I'd planned this trip down to every detail, and snapped a selfie. My face was glowing from the silica mud mask, my hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and behind me stretched an otherworldly landscape that looked like something from a dream. I posted it to my Instagram story with the caption, "Sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when you choose yourself first." Blue Lagoon, Iceland, self-love. That's when my phone started buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. The first call was from my mother at 7:23 a.m. Iceland time. I let it go to voicemail. Then Sarah called, then my father, then Sarah again, then my youngest brother Jake, who hadn't called me in probably 6 months. I floated there in that gorgeous warm water, watching my phone light up like a Christmas tree, and felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. For years, I would have dropped everything to answer those calls, to rush to solve whatever crisis they were experiencing. But today, I was learning what it felt like to prioritize my own peace. After the 5th call from Sarah, I finally listened to her voicemail. Her voice was shaky, borderline panicked. "Madison, where are you? I know Mom said the wedding was small, but I thought you'd be here anyway. People are asking about you, and I don't know what to tell them. Please call me back. Something feels really wrong without you here." The second voicemail was from my mother, and her tone was completely different, sharp and demanding. "Madison Rose Thompson, you answer this phone right now. I don't know what game you're playing, but your sister needs you here. This is not the time for one of your moods." One of my moods. 28 years of being the accommodating daughter, and the first time I chose myself, it was dismissed as one of my moods. But it was the third voicemail that made me sit up straighter in the warm water. It was from someone I hadn't expected to hear from, David, Sarah's groom. "Madison, hey, it's David. I know this is weird, me calling you on my wedding day, but Sarah is really upset. She just found out that you weren't actually invited to the wedding, and she's not handling it well. She's locked herself in the bridal suite and won't come out until she talks to you. I don't know what happened with your parents, but Sarah genuinely thought you chose not to come. She's been telling people you were travelling for work. Please, can you just call her, for her sake?" I floated there for a long moment, processing this information. Sarah didn't know, she actually didn't know, that our parents had deliberately excluded me from the guest list, lied to me about the size of the wedding, and kept me out of all the planning. Part of me felt vindicated. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't being overly sensitive. But another part of me felt genuinely sad for Sarah. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and instead, she was discovering that our parents had orchestrated a massive deception that was now threatening to ruin everything. I climbed out of the Blue Lagoon, wrapped myself in the plush robe provided by the spa, and found a quiet corner with good cell reception. It was time to have the conversation I'd been both dreading and looking forward to for months. Sarah answered on the first ring. Madison, where are you? Please tell me you're just running late." "I'm in Iceland, Sarah." "What? Iceland? Like the country?" "Yes, the country. I'm at the Blue Lagoon. It's absolutely beautiful here." There was a long silence, and then I heard Sarah start to cry. Not the delicate tears of a bride worried about her makeup, but the ugly, heartbroken sobs of someone whose world was crashing down. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Mum said you knew it was going to be small, and you were okay with it. She said you were travelling for work anyway and couldn't make it." "Sarah, honey, take a deep breath. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. How many people are at your wedding right now?" About 200. But Madison, I thought you knew. Did you personally call me and uninvite me from your wedding?" "No, I would never. Madison, I've been planning your role in this wedding for months. Your dress is hanging in the bridal suite. Your name is on the seating chart. I have a whole speech planned about how you're the best sister anyone could ask for." And there it was, the confirmation of what I already knew but had been afraid to fully accept. Sarah hadn't excluded me. Our parents had. "Sarah, I need you to sit down, okay? Because what I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to hear." Over the next 20 minutes, sitting in a bathrobe in Iceland while my sister sat in her wedding dress 3,000 miles away, I told her everything. The phone call from Mum about keeping things small, the evasive answers about location and timing, the accidental discovery of the family group chat that I wasn't included in, the screenshot of Mum's message about not giving me details because of how I get when I'm not the centre of attention. Sarah was quiet for a long time after I finished. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, harder, more mature somehow. Madison, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I genuinely thought you chose not to come, and I couldn't understand why, but I figured you had your reasons. I can't believe they did this to you, to us. I know you didn't know, Sarah. That's why I'm talking to you now instead of just letting you wonder. But you're in Iceland. You're literally on the other side of the world during my wedding. Yes, I am. And for the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She was quiet again, and I could hear people talking in the background. Bridesmaids asking if she was okay. Someone mentioning that guests were starting to ask questions. What do I do now? Sarah asked. And for the first time in our lives, she was asking for my advice instead of expecting me to just go along with whatever she decided. You get married, Sarah. You marry David. You have your beautiful wedding with your 200 guests, and you have an amazing time. This is your day, and you deserve every bit of happiness. But you're not here. No, I'm not. But I'm not here because I don't love you or because I don't support your marriage. I'm not here because I finally learned that I can't keep showing up for people who don't show up for me. And unfortunately, our parents have made it very clear where I stand in this family. Madison, I want to fix this. After the honeymoon, I want to sit down with Mom and Dad and... Sarah, stop. Today is about you and David. Don't let their dysfunction ruin your wedding day. We can talk about all of this later, but right now, you need to go get married. Will you stay on the phone with me while I walk down the aisle? I know it's crazy, but I want you to be here somehow. And that's how I ended up witnessing my sister's wedding from a geothermal spa in Iceland, watching the sunrise paint the sky in impossible colours, while Sarah whispered commentary about the ceremony through my earbuds. Dad looks nervous, she giggled as the music started. David is crying. He's such a softie. Oh my God, Madison, you should see the flowers. They're exactly what we talked about when we were kids. Remember? Those white roses with the baby's breath? I did remember. We used to plan our dream weddings together when we were little. Lying in Sarah's bed after lights out, whispering about dresses and flowers and whether we'd marry princes or rock stars. Madison, I'm walking now. I wish you could see this. Everyone looks so happy, but I keep looking for you in the crowd and remembering you're not here, and it's breaking my heart. Sarah, look at David. Look at your husband. This moment is about the two of you creating something new together. Don't let our parents' choices take away from that. I heard the officiant begin the ceremony, heard David's voice crack as he said his vows, heard Sarah promise to love him through whatever life brought them. And despite everything, despite being excluded and lied to and made to feel invisible, I found myself crying happy tears for my sister. Because love is complicated and family is messy, but Sarah wasn't responsible for our parents' choices. She was just a woman marrying the man she loved, and she deserved to have that moment be beautiful. When the ceremony ended and Sarah was officially Mrs. David Martinez, she whispered into the phone, "Madison, I love you, and I promise you, things are going to be different from now on. I'm not going to let them treat you like this anymore. I love you too, Sarah. Now go celebrate with your husband. And Sarah? Send me pictures later. I want to see how beautiful everything turned out. After we hung up, I sat there in the Icelandic morning, wrapped in my robe, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I had missed my sister's wedding, but I had also discovered something important about myself. I was capable of setting boundaries. I was capable of choosing my own happiness over other people's expectations. The rest of the day unfolded like a beautiful dream. I hiked to a waterfall called Seljalandsfoss, where you can actually walk behind the falling water. I stood there surrounded by mist and rainbows, feeling more alive than I had in years. I visited the black sand beaches of Reynisfjara, where the waves crashed against volcanic rock formations that looked like something from another planet. Every few hours, my phone would buzz with messages from various family members. My father sent a terse text. Your behaviour today was unacceptable. Your sister needed you. My mother left a voicemail that started with guilt and ended with anger. I hope you're happy with yourself, Madison. You've ruined Sarah's perfect day with your selfishness. But the messages that mattered came from Sarah. Pictures of the reception, videos of her first dance with David, a photo of the cake that was decorated with the exact design we'd talked about years ago, and with each picture, a message. Wish you were here, but I understand why you're not. The most surprising message came from David. Madison, Sarah told me everything. I'm sorry our families put you in this position. For what it's worth, Sarah talked about you non-stop during the planning process. She was devastated when she thought you didn't want to come. I hope we can all figure out how to move forward from this. That evening, as I soaked in the hot springs at a different geothermal spa, watching the northern lights dance across the star-filled sky, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time, pride in myself. Not pride in accomplishing something for someone else, or pride in being useful or accommodating, but pride in having the courage to honour my own worth. My phone buzzed one more time. It was a text from Emma, who had been following my Iceland adventure on social media all day. You look absolutely radiant. I'm so proud of you for choosing yourself. You're glowing with happiness, and it shows in every picture. She was right. Looking back at the photos I'd taken throughout the day, I barely recognised myself. Instead of the tired, tense expression I usually wore at family events, I looked genuinely happy, free, alive. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Sarah's wedding reception had apparently been a disaster. Not because of anything that went wrong with the actual event, but because the family drama had exploded in spectacular fashion. According to Sarah's texts, sent at 2 a.m. her time, the truth about my exclusion had spread through the wedding reception like wildfire. Apparently, our Aunt Linda had asked Mom where I was, and Mom had given some vague answer about me being too busy with work. But then our cousin Rebecca, who follows me on Instagram, had seen my Blue Lagoon posts and mentioned that I was clearly on vacation in Iceland. One thing led to another, and soon half the wedding reception knew that the bride's sister hadn't been invited to the intimate 200-person celebration. The whispers and questions had created an undercurrent of tension that even the open bar couldn't smooth over. Madison, Sarah's text read, I've never been so embarrassed by our parents. Aunt Linda cornered Mom by the cake table and demanded to know why you weren't here. When Mum tried to lie, Rebecca showed everyone your Instagram posts. People started putting the pieces together, and by the end of the night, half our relatives were giving Mum and Dad the cold shoulder. I'm mortified that this is how people will remember my wedding. Not for the love and celebration, but for the family drama. But the text that surprised me most was the one that came in at 6 a.m. I'm proud of you for going to Iceland. I'm proud of you for not letting them make you feel small anymore. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see how they've been treating you. Things are going to change, Madison. I promise. Over the next week, as I explored more of Iceland's incredible landscapes, the geysers, the glaciers, the tiny fishing villages that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale, I received a steady stream of messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Apparently, my absence from Sarah's wedding had forced a lot of uncomfortable conversations about family dynamics that people had been ignoring for too long. Aunt Linda sent a long email apologising for not speaking up sooner about my parents' favouritism. My cousin James called to tell me he'd always thought I got a raw deal but hadn't known how to address it. Even my grandmother, who was 86 and had never sent a text in her life, managed to figure out how to message me. Proud of you for finally standing up for yourself, sweetheart. Some lessons take a lifetime to learn. The messages that were notably absent were from my parents. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, no attempt to explain or make amends. Just silence, which somehow said more than any words could have. But the most important realization came on my last day in Iceland, as I stood at the edge of a glacier looking out at an endless expanse of ice and sky. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't anxiously checking my phone, waiting for someone else to need something from me. I wasn't worrying about whether I'd disappointed anyone or failed to meet someone else's expectations. I was just Madison, standing in one of the most beautiful places on earth, feeling completely and utterly myself. When I flew back to the States, I wasn't returning as the same person who had left. I was returning as someone who had learned the difference between being loved and being useful, between being included and being tolerated, between family and people who happen to share your DNA. The first person to greet me at the airport was Emma, holding a sign that said, "Welcome home, Iceland Queen." She hugged me tight and said, "You look like a completely different person, like you found something you didn't even know you were looking for." She was right. I had found something in Iceland, not just stunning landscapes and magical experiences, but a version of myself that I'd never allowed to exist before. A version that wasn't defined by other people's needs or limited by their inability to see my worth. Sarah called me that evening. "I know you just got back, but would you want to have dinner tomorrow? Just the two of us. I have a lot I want to talk to you about." "I'd like that," I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it. As I unpacked my suitcase, surrounded by photos and memories of the most transformative week of my life, I realized that sometimes the most important journey you can take isn't to a destination on a map. Sometimes it's the journey back to yourself, back to the person you were before other people's expectations taught you to make yourself smaller. My family had excluded me from a wedding, thinking it would make me disappear quietly into the background where they preferred me to be. Instead, they had given me the greatest gift imaginable, the push I needed to finally choose myself. And as it turned out, choosing myself looked absolutely beautiful, against the backdrop of Icelandic glaciers and northern lights. It looked like freedom, like joy, like a woman who had finally learned that her worth wasn't determined by how useful she could be to people who couldn't even be bothered to include her in a group chat. Some endings are really beginnings in disguise. And some of the most beautiful chapters of your life start the moment you stop waiting for other people to write them for you.